I think we've got 2 of those already back, and we're bringing the 3rd airplane back. They have, in fact, stopped taking delivery of aircraft due to the tariff environment.
Boeing is being hit with its first worker strike in 16 years.
Say a 25% increase across the board on tariffs. Tit for tat from both sides.
So Boeing, big disappointment to me. Big disappointment.
Each Boeing aircraft could now cost up to $40 million more to produce due to the new 200% import tariffs imposed by the Trump administration in 2025. The impact was immediate and severe. In just the first week of May, Boeing's stock plummeted more than 7%, wiping out billions in market value and sending shockwaves through both Wall Street and Washington. Facing these mounting pressures, Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg issued a stark statement. "We are being forced to consider options outside the United States. The implications are unprecedented." A company long considered a symbol of American industrial strength is now openly questioning its ability to continue manufacturing on U.S. soil. Before the tariff shock even hit, Boeing was already in the grip of an internal credibility crisis. A string of high-profile safety failures and whistleblower allegations had begun to chip away at the company's long-standing reputation for engineering excellence. In early 2024, a door panel on an Alaska Airlines Boeing 737 MAX violently detached mid-flight at 30,000 feet, an incident that reignited global scrutiny over Boeing's safety protocols. Investigations revealed that the component was either improperly installed or not properly secured, a detail made worse by reports of rushed assembly lines and inadequate inspections. Meanwhile, over $84 billion worth of aircraft inventory remains grounded, unable to be delivered due to pending FAA certifications and unresolved safety concerns. Internal reports suggest bottlenecks in compliance documentation and quality assurance are at the heart of the delays. More troubling still are the voices coming from inside the company. According to multiple reports from the Wall Street Journal and whistleblower disclosures filed with the FAA, over 200 internal complaints have been made, many accusing Boeing of cutting corners on safety to meet production targets. These allegations describe a culture where speed and profitability were prioritized over regulatory compliance, a dangerous trade-off in aerospace manufacturing. An FAA review in late 2024 further uncovered that faulty rudder systems and misinstalled parts were still being incorporated into commercial jets despite internal awareness of the issues. The agency labeled Boeing's internal quality control as deficient and recommended intensified oversight. The message was clear: public and investor confidence in Boeing was already deeply shaken, even before trade policy escalated the crisis. The trade crisis that now threatens Boeing's future didn't begin with faulty parts or internal missteps, it escalated with policy. In early 2025, the Trump administration reintroduced a hardline America First economic stance aimed at reshoring manufacturing and reducing reliance on foreign components. At the core of this shift was a 200% import tariff imposed on key aerospace parts and raw materials coming from China and the European Union. Simultaneously, the White House revived a strict Buy American mandate, effectively requiring companies like Boeing to fully localize their supply chains, a condition many experts say is logistically and economically unfeasible in the short term. These dual measures, tariffs and forced domestic sourcing, have pushed Boeing's cost structure to the breaking point. A single aircraft, once already expensive to produce, could now cost tens of millions of dollars more, making it nearly impossible to compete in international markets. Speaking to the Wall Street Journal, CEO Kelly Ortberg put it bluntly: "The current tariff structure makes our products globally uncompetitive. The consequences are cascading. With export pricing no longer viable, Boeing faces a loss of key international contracts. Suppliers across the U.S., from specialized parts manufacturers in Wichita to composite material plants in Alabama, are now at risk of mass layoffs as production slows and orders stall. What began as a strategy to protect American industry is now undermining one of its most iconic companies." As Boeing signaled that it may begin shifting segments of its production outside the United States in response to escalating costs, former President Donald Trump wasted no time launching a familiar yet forceful political response. At a campaign rally in Ohio and across his social media platforms, Trump denounced Boeing's actions as a betrayal of American workers, casting the move as a symbolic rupture in a national loyalty, a challenge to the very core of his America First doctrine. In typical fashion, Trump didn't stop at rhetoric. He proposed that any Boeing aircraft assembled in Mexico or any other foreign country would be subject to punitive tariffs upon re-entry to the U.S., effectively warning that Boeing would pay a high price for deviating from his vision of a protectionist, domestically grounded industrial policy. If you want to build American jets, you build them in America. If you go offshore, you pay to come back, Trump stated. But the situation is far more complex than slogans and sound bites suggest. Boeing is not just another corporation, it's one of the strategic pillars of the U.S. industrial base, producing nearly half of the nation's commercial aircraft and playing a crucial role in national defense. The company employs over 140,000 people directly, with an estimated 1.3 million jobs indirectly tied to its supply chain across more than 40 states. These include high-skill sectors such as aerospace engineering, avionics, and precision materials industries not easily replaced or outsourced. In addition, Boeing holds over $25 billion in active U.S. Department of Defense contracts manufacturing critical assets such as the KC-46 aerial refueling tanker and components for the next-generation intercontinental ballistic missile system Sentinel ICBM. Any substantial disruption to Boeing's operations could impact not only commercial markets, but also national security logistics. This reality places Trump in a strategic bind. On one hand, allowing Boeing to shift production abroad would undermine his populist messaging on restoring American manufacturing, a central tenet of both his past and current presidential campaigns. On the other hand, applying excessive political or economic pressure could destabilize a key defense contractor and trigger cascading effects across a fragile industrial ecosystem already grappling with labor shortages, global supply chain volatility, and cost inflation. The contradiction at the core of this conflict is hard to ignore. Can a government demand absolute domestic loyalty from multinational corporations while simultaneously burdening them with uncompetitive cost structures on the world stage? Boeing's dilemma illustrates the limitations of unilateral protectionism in a deeply globalized industry. Aircraft production is one of the most interconnected manufacturing sectors in the world, often involving components sourced from over 50 countries. From Japanese titanium and French avionics to German turbine systems and Canadian landing gear, Boeing's supply chain is inherently international, and attempts to localize it entirely within U.S. borders would require years of reinvestment duplication of capacity and substantially higher end-user prices. Moreover, analysts warn that forcing Boeing into a binary choice between compliance with punitive policy or cost-effective survival could push the company into longer-term decline, opening more space for global rivals like Airbus and China's COMAC to expand their market share. Boeing's already shrinking backlog, combined with the quality control issues and export challenges, leaves it particularly vulnerable to policy overreach. At its core, this confrontation is not just about Boeing. It's about the tension between political narrative and economic reality, and whether ideological purity can coexist with global industrial competitiveness. Boeing, long held up as a national champion, now finds itself penalized by the very policies that were ostensibly designed to protect companies like it. As the 2025 election cycle intensifies, the stakes grow higher. Trump will likely face a decision double down on punitive economic nationalism, even at the cost of industrial disruption, or pivot toward pragmatism to safeguard a cornerstone of American engineering. That choice may define not only the future of Boeing, but the credibility of the broader America First experiment. If Boeing begins to shift production outside the United States, or even just loses ground in global markets due to its inability to compete on price, its absence won't go unnoticed. It will be filled. The international aerospace industry is not waiting idly. Two major players are already positioned to capitalize: Airbus, the European aerospace giant, and COMAC, China's fast-emerging, state-backed aircraft manufacturer. Airbus has long been Boeing's chief rival in the commercial aviation market, with a more geographically diversified supply chain and less exposure to U.S.-centered political risk. COMAC, meanwhile, has steadily grown its capabilities with state funding and political backing, and it is eager to seize global market share as soon as any opening appears. Analysts estimate that if Boeing's export capacity continues to erode under the current tariff regime, Airbus and COMAC could control up to 80% of the global commercial aircraft export market by 2026. This shift would not only reduce Boeing's international influence, but would reorient global aviation supply chains away from the United States, possibly permanently. The ripple effects wouldn't stop with Boeing. Across the U.S., a dense web of high-skilled aerospace-dependent economies would feel the shock. States like South Carolina, Washington, and Texas, which host Boeing's manufacturing plants and major suppliers, could lose tens of thousands of specialized jobs, from avionics engineers and composite material technicians to logistics and tooling specialists. Unlike general manufacturing, these are positions that require years of experience, and are not easily transferable to other industries. This is not just a corporate restructuring story, it's a strategic rebalancing of industrial power. If Boeing weakens America, doesn't just lose a company, it risks losing its seat at the table in defining the future of global aviation. And that future increasingly may be written in Toulouse or Shanghai. Ultimately, this isn't merely a clash between a CEO and a president. It's a moment of reckoning, a test of whether U.S. industrial policy can maintain relevance in a multipolar economic world, or whether protectionist intent will unintentionally accelerate America's decline in one of its most iconic industries. If Boeing, one of the most iconic symbols of American industry, finds itself unable to operate competitively within the United States because of U.S. policies, then a hard question must be asked. Who are these policies really protecting? Tariffs and domestic sourcing mandates may be framed as patriotic, but when their real-world effect is to drive American companies abroad, eliminate skilled domestic jobs, and weaken global competitiveness, the logic of protectionism starts to collapse in on itself. At some point, nationalism that punishes national champions becomes self-defeating. What happens when a country's most American company concludes that it cannot survive under America first? What does it say when a firm entrusted with billions in defense, contracts, aerospace innovation, and employment across more than 40 states is backed into a corner by its own government? These aren't just policy failures, they're ideological contradictions. As Boeing faces the impossible choice between survival and staying loyal to domestic mandates, we are left with a larger question. Are we witnessing patriotism through policy or protectionism without purpose? The line between the two has never been thinner. And in that narrow space, one of America's most important industries may be unraveling.